everyone, and welcome back to Around Our World in 80! Say hello! This week, we watched Mulan! Yay! Say it was a good one, wasn't it? History of Mulan, according to Wikipedia. So if you didn't know, Mulan came out in 1998. I actually remember it coming out. Mulan was actually one of the first of 3 features produced primarily at the Disney Animation Studio at Disney MGM Studios in Orlando, Florida. And I actually remember going on a backstage tour of MGM because they have all the behind the scenes stuff back then, not anymore, thanks Star Wars Land. But I actually remember they took us into a viewing area where we could actually watch them drawing the animations and the what do you call it? Storyboards for Mulan. So that was pretty cool. So Mulan's opening weekend box office gross revenue was $22.8 million, making it the second highest grossing film that week behind only The X-Files. It earned $304 million worldwide, making it the second highest grossing family film of the year behind A Bug's Life, and the 7th highest grossing film of the year overall. While Mulan domestically outgrossed the 2 Disney films which had preceded it, The Hunchback of Notre Dame and Hercules, its box office returns failed to match those of the Disney films of the early 1990s, such as Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and The Lion King. Most of the reception of Mulan was positive. Rotten Tomatoes gave it an 86%. And then what was really interesting to me, Disney was keen to promote Mulan to the Chinese, hoping to replicate their success with the 1994 film The Lion King, which was one of the country's highest-grossing Western films at the time. Disney also hoped it might smooth over relations with the Chinese government, which had soured after the release of Kundun? Sure. A Disney-funded biography of the Dalai Lama that the Chinese government considered politically provocative. China had threatened to curtail business negotiations with Disney over that film, and as the government only accepted 10 foreign films per year at that time to be shown in their country, Mulan's chances of being accepted were low. Finally, after a year's delay, the Chinese government did allow for the film to be in a limited Chinese release, but only after the Chinese New Year, so as to ensure that local films dominated the more lucrative holiday market. Box office income was low due to both the unfavorable release date and rampant piracy. And the Chinese people also complained about Mulan's depiction as too foreign-looking and the story as too different from the myths. And now they have Shanghai Disney. Okay, so this week as far as our activities went was very difficult. We initially planned to watch Mulan this week because there was supposed to be a dragon boat race and a kite festival on that Sunday. And then we had a lightning storm. Kites and lightning do not mix, no matter what Benjamin Franklin lets you know. Then we had something else planned, and then Jared got sick, which is why he's not talking very much, because his throat hurts.
I'm feeling better now.
Yeah.
A little better, but it's kind of bedridden for 3 days.
Yeah. So we didn't really go anywhere this week. And we debated whether we should do a different movie or if we should try to find another activity and just squeeze it in. But instead of killing ourselves and trying to get it all done, we thought we would just sit down and we would talk about our trip to China, which was 8 years ago now. Kind of crazy.
So crazy.
My aunt and uncle lived in Korea at the time as missionaries, and so we went one Christmas to go spend Christmas in Korea with them, and we made a big trip out of it. We did China for 4 days?
3 days.
3 days, and then we did Korea with them, and then we all went to the Philippines after Christmas because it was their Christmas holiday, and that's where they go to the beach. But we're going to specifically focus on the China aspect of it because Mulan takes place in China. So, list of things that we saw. We did one of my bucket list things, which was go to the Great Wall of China.
That was really cool.
Which prompted the disastrous mug catastrophe of 2010. To commemorate the fact that we went to the Great Wall of China, we went to Starbucks and we bought a mug which had a picture of the Great Wall of China on it. You know, the "You Are Here" mugs. And when we got back to the hotel, I managed to drop said mug and it smashed into smithereens, and Jared had to like power walk 20 minutes back to the Starbucks to buy me a new one. He's the best.
I was parting people like the Red Sea coming down the sidewalk. It was really entertaining.
And my dad ended up going and helping as well.
Because they saw me on the way going the opposite direction, because I was a foot and a half taller than everybody else, so I stuck out.
Yeah.
Met up with me going the other direction towards Starbucks.
Yeah. The Great Wall itself was incredible.
I remember your mom was really worried about your asthma.
Yeah, my asthma was acting up. Because you got to understand, if people think that pollution is really bad here in the United States, then they should not go to China.
Not go to Beijing.
Not go to Beijing.
China is a lot bigger than just Beijing.
That's fair. They should not go to Beijing because the pollution is like terrible and everybody smokes. And it was crazy because like you were standing on top of a mountain basically, and you could like barely see the mountain range next to you. Like visibility was really bad.
And there was clouds down in the valleys, but instead of clouds being made of water, it was actually smog, fog.
So my asthma was acting up as we were climbing.
Gross. Your brother hopped all the way to the top like a gazelle.
And then when we got back down, he was taking pictures with Chinese girls.
And he made it down to the bottom about 20 minutes ahead of everybody else, and he had Chinese girls swarming him taking pictures.
Selfies! Visually, like, it was just stunning. It's incredible to think, like, they didn't really have a blueprint for this, and they just kind of went with the mountain. And so, like, it just... the way it looks almost like a river of a wall, like, because it doesn't ever go like just straight. It just kind of
they followed the ridge line of the mountain.
So that was really cool. Another big thing that we saw that was crazy was the Forbidden City, which is where the emperor lived. That place just went on and on and on and on, because like they had like different layers of the city. So like, you know, if you were less important, you would only get to like the first like gate pagoda thing, and if you were more important, you would go like further.
It was built with inner circles, so the outermost circle was the big defensive wall, and then the people that lived in the outermost circle were the least important, like servants and stuff like that. And then as you made it more and more towards the center of the city, the more and more high ranking you were, and officials or whatever, and then the emperor lived at the very center.
Yeah. And it was the amount of detail that goes into their architecture was mind-blowing. From the, you know, paintings on the wood to the little like figurines that were on the corners of the pagodas. And that's one way you could figure out how important a building was how many figurines it had on the corners. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Then we also went to Tiananmen Square, which is kind of a controversial place to go.
It's right in front of the Forbidden City.
Yeah. And also where like the seats of the government are. And it's just like this vast expanse of cement.
Concrete.
And there's tons of people there,
And
lots of tourists. Yeah. And it was kind of surreal standing there, not gonna lie. It was pretty intense. We also went to the Temple of Heaven, which, if you've been to Epcot, is what the replica is in the Epcot Chinese Pavilion. But we saw the real one.
Just much bigger.
Much bigger. And
much more impressive.
Extremely impressive. Again, the amount of detail that they put into all of their architecture is just fascinating. Then we went on, so we did a lot of tours because obviously we didn't speak Chinese at the time, although my brother does now. And so we had a tour guide that would take us to all these different places. So we went to a couple of tours talking about how they made jade, like necklaces and statues and things like that. So we visited, you know, the jade store. And then we also went and saw how they made silk.
Yeah, that was all in one day. So
Yeah.
we went to the Jade place, the tourist trap Jade store, and then we went to the tourist trap silk factory,
Yeah.
and then we went to the
Ming Dynasty
burial grounds and did a little bit of walking around there, and then we ended at the Great Wall for that day.
Yeah. But the Ming Dynasty tombs were really interesting just because they kind of explained the dynasties in order. Like, they had a room where they had a tapestry for each dynasty and the years that they ruled. And it's a little bit more historical in nature. Plus, what was really interesting was these tombs were actually raided at one point, and you could still see, like, the paint, like the red paint and some of the destruction that happened during that raid, which was, you don't really study that part of history when you do world history or U.S. history. you pretty much stop at, like, the 1960s, and you try to cram in the last 30, 40 years in, like, a day.
Something like that.
And then one of the things that we also did was we went and it was like a talent show, it
was a Chinese performing show.
Yeah, performance. And that one was really intense because they did this, like, bicycle number, and they actually had a crash in the middle of the performance.
Had 12 women all riding the same single bicycle.
Yeah.
Together, and halfway through the performance, they had their tower they built on top of this moving bicycle collapsed, and everybody fell, and
everybody seemed to be okay.
Yeah.
They, like, actually continued the performance. They recovered. But yeah, that was an intense show. They were doing all sorts of acrobatics and things like that.
Acrobatics, Chinese yo-yos.
So, what were your impressions of the Chinese people?
I mean, they try to take pictures with us and stuff a lot, just because.
Our tour guides were very awesome and very, very nice. One thing that stuck out to me was the one guy actually rode a train for like 2 hours to come into work one way, which I thought was very dedicated.
I would say my impression having left there is that the Chinese people, at least that we saw, were a very resilient people.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. And they also, like, always commented about how large our family was. Because they're not allowed to have large families.
Nope.
This is going to be an interesting question. What were your impressions of the Chinese food?
Loved it.
Hated it. Okay, and I love P.F. Chang's, okay? But if you're going over to China and you're expecting P.F. Chang's, you're going to be disappointed. I remember we went into one restaurant, which we had spent a really long time trying to find because they had, like, moved locations, and we were trying to, like, translate the sign saying, like, where they moved, and you went down to this basement, and you could hear crickets, and I was like, oh, nice ambiance. Nope, they're on the menu. I did try duck.
Which was fantastic.
It was not my favorite.
It was lettuce wrapped duck tacos. They were great.
Yeah, it was a little weird. I was not quite as adventurous with
no
my
one in your
eating
family
method.
really liked the food that much, at least that I remember.
Mitchell was okay with it.
I remember finishing a lot of everyone's meals.
Yeah.
Because I was, like, having a blast eating.
Although, wasn't there, like, one dessert?
Yeah, there was this little buffet place we went to down in a basement somewhere.
Yeah.
Just downstairs somewhere, and had this buffet, and the food was good, and then they had a bunch of dessert stuff sitting out, and they had these little, like, sponge cakes, and I was like, oh, these are gonna be good, and so me and Mitchell grabbed a bunch of them, and I remember biting into the first one, and it was literally like a sponge. I was like, this is terrible. And I moved on to the next one, and it was the same thing, and they all tasted like sponge, and I was like, all right, no, it's not tasty.
Yeah.
So.
What were your impressions of trying to navigate around China?
No, the tour guides did a good job of trying to get you lost, so you'd spend more time and money.
Yeah.
They were not the most direct.
No. What were your impressions of the Chinese architecture?
Stunning.
Yeah.
Not
at least the old stuff was stunning.
Yeah. What you think of when you think of Chinese architecture. I mean, the buildings were I don't think they would pass many of the same codes that we have in the U.S. But again, the Chinese people are very resilient and very innovative.
Yeah.
In the way they do stuff. The temples and the old buildings, the way they were put together, I mean, no nails, no glue, nothing, just friction of pieces and gravity. And they would build huge towering buildings with several floors and all this stuff, and there was not a single nail or any kind of fastening agent in any of it. It was all just locking joints that they cut into the wood itself.
Really fancy Lincoln logs.
Lincoln logs. And it was just, they had, I remember I think it was the Temple of Heaven that we went to, they had one room and it had a small scale model of what the temple looked like, but it had a cutaway so you could see all the joinery and everything. And I think I spent 20 minutes just standing there looking at that. I had to go find them because they left. Because I was in engineering school, and I was just blown away by the genius of their construction.
And then when you're looking at like just normal China, so like modern day China, like we went into the mall, and it's a pretty typical like mall you might find here in the United States.
Except for there's Garfield everywhere.
Except there was Garfield everywhere because we went around Christmas, and so all of their Christmas stuff had this like 1950s Santa Claus head on it, or it was Garfield themed. So I found that really interesting. It was one of the very few times that I had been like out of my element when it came to visiting a country very, very, very different to ours. But I loved it. Like it was still one of the trips, like, you know, it's on the top of the list as far as like experiences go. So yeah, because I mean it was different and we learned a lot. It was very eye-opening.
Okay, I didn't think you liked China that much.
I think I might, if I went back to China, I would like to go to Hong Kong or Shanghai. Okay, well, sorry we didn't have like a super exciting activity or anything like that, but we hope that you enjoyed hearing about our trip to China. And who knows, maybe we'll get to go back in a couple years or so. So it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next week. Bye!